Okay, so how do I know?
You have a little red light on your deal. Yep, you're good. You're recording.
Okay.
They said that yesterday they kept telling me to push the center button to make it follow you.
Yeah, push the center button. There you go. You're good.
No.
Well,
They're pretty fancy.
the student teachers all come with them, but I don't ever mess with them. I just sit back there and try to stay awake. That's not nice. So, my name's Shane Curry, Fairview High School. I brought Jason Boatman. He's the CEO and owner. Is that right?
Yeah.
For CERT. What does CERT stand for? I ought to know that.
It's robotic technology.
There you go. He owns the company that I have one of his plasma tables at my school, and we're going to kind of talk about that. This is just kind of what I want to cover before I'm going to let him turn loose and talk to you. He does these presentations all the time, and since it is such a small group, hopefully we'll be able to cater to what you want to know. Amber was just telling me that she's not liking her software. She doesn't have a CERT table, but she uses sheet cam, so she ought to be able to use Inkscape if she's using sheet cam, then, right? Yep.
Yeah.
So
I'll go over that, how they all work.
so hopefully, if nothing else today, you get an idea of what I consider to be the best design software out there for a high school ag setting, and that's Inkscape. Why listen to me? Okay. I'm not saying I'm any smarter than anybody else. I'm certainly not. I just put some pictures on there, then that's all this year of things we've cut with our CERT table. I'm on my 5th plasma table since I started teaching. I've put together a lot of them. The reason I kind of got into it, obviously, I mean, when I was in college, OSU got one, and that was fairly new technology at the time. So as I started teaching, I figured out almost every high school out there had a plasma cam at the time. It was a blue and gold machine, but 90% of them I saw were in the corner with stuff stacked on top of them because it didn't work. And we got another guy from CERT here named Ron that I think will be back in a little bit. I told him this was the joke I was going to use today. Whoever the marketer for plasma cam was a genius because they made them blue and gold. I guess that kind of enticed the ag teachers. They were cheap, and they got those machines out to a lot of places. And they still have a cult following. I mean, there's still ag teachers out there that swear by them. C.L. McGill, some of those guys use them all the time. The problem is they're out of state. Uh-oh.
Get your cord, I'll get it plugged in for you.
Hello? Yeah. Hey, good. I'm in the middle of a professional development. Can I call you right back? Okay. Bye. I don't know if that's 2 cords.
I'll figure it out. You keep talking.
The problem is they're out of state, and their customer service is very lacking. So like I said, they do still have a cult following, but so does the McRib, and that doesn't mean it's good for you. Oh, we're going that way? Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's what I learned on at OSU. I just thought that's what...
I'll fix the screen.
Okay, I'm just going to keep talking. I just thought that's what it was, and that's what everybody was kind of stuck with, was the plasma cam. I went through 2 Torchmate tables. I went through a Piranha table. And every time, the problem I kept coming back to was customer service. Torchmate was good for a while. They were an independent company. Lincoln bought them out, and they became a huge company. And next thing you know, you're right back to square one. You can't get help. And there is a big learning curve if you don't have CAD experience. So that being said, what I started looking for was local. And the reason I say that is, I don't know about you guys, but I like to shop local. If I can buy an American-made product, I will. Sorry. If I can buy an American-made product, I will, but if I can buy a made-in-Oklahoma product, I for sure want to do that. So when I started when we moved to Fairview, started looking at buying another table, that was my first question, is there a company in Oklahoma? And Jason, you have to help me. Is there another one, or are you the only one?
That builds small machines, we're the only one.
Okay, so that, I don't want to say that like they're the only option, and
There was a couple others that sprung up, like there was actually one in Stillwater, but they were building really bad machines. They didn't last long. And there was one in Ada, and they disappeared as well.
that,
That's the table I have to take in right here.
okay, well, my story on the deal in Ada, one of my friends that teaches down in Southeast bought a machine, paid for it, couldn't get them to answer the phone, finally went to the factory, and I think they had just shut down, and he had already paid for a table. So I wanted somebody that's in it for the long run, and I wanted somebody in it that was building a quality machine. And if I can get that here in Oklahoma, then that's my kind of business venture I want to go into. I mean, when I buy shop equipment, I buy all my big shop equipment from Whole Machine Tools there in Oklahoma City, because he's been in business for 50 years, and unless he retires, I know he's not going anywhere, and he's not going to sell something he wouldn't stand behind. So that's kind of why I went with CERT more than anything, is because when I talked to Jason, I talked to some of his techs, I talked to other ag teachers that had the machine, I figured out really quick, those guys always answer the phone. And it's not a customer service hotline. I mean, they answer their personal cell phone when you call. They know what machine I have, and 90% of the time, well, no, I'm going to say 100% of the time, I've had my machine 3 years. I've never had to have them come back to my ag building. I mean, we've always troubleshot over the phone. 90% of the time, it's maintenance that I'm not doing, and that'll probably happen to you too, or at least in western Oklahoma, the sand blows and it gets nasty, and most of the time my problem is a dirty part somewhere, or a dirty lens or something like that. So picking a table that's right for you, I think when a guy goes to look at that, I shouldn't say guy, when a person or an ag teacher goes to look at finding a table that's right for you, what's the biggest thing? I mean, what's your number one limiting factor on a table? I think space is, yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we don't all have a huge shop to stick one in, so space is a big deal. The other one to me would be money. I mean, that is what I've heard more from people that wind up with like a plasma cam machine, and I don't want you guys to think I'm talking bad about another company. They are the cheapest one. You agree with that, Jason?
There is a few out there that are cheaper, but not very many.
Well, they're considerably cheaper than others, but it is a 100% get what you pay for thing. When we're talking about budget, I know it gets real important, but you also have to think about the longevity of a machine. My biggest gripe over anything else with Torchmate is they started making those machines where they only had about a 5-year life expectancy. And I'm not saying that the machine wouldn't hold up. The software got outdated, and the hardware even would get outdated, and they would stop making the old hardware. So shy of completely rebuilding your table, you just didn't have many options other than trying to eBay old stock. And that just doesn't always work out great with a school, trying to buy stuff that way. So I would say price is a huge factor, space is a huge factor, and really what are you wanting to do? If you're going to do a lot of fabrication, big fabrication, then the size of that table I think gets real important really fast. To me, when I started looking at them, and Jason's going to talk to you more, I'm sure, about sizes, all of my tables up until this one were 4x4 machines. Do you guys have tables at home? I know some of you have talked to. Okay. Does anybody have a CERT?
No, I don't think so.
No? Okay. Well, we're going to try to convert you today then. So anyway, what I had 4x4 tables, and for most of what I do in an ag shop, I mean, if you go back to those pictures, you can tell we do a lot of artwork. If I can find my pictures. In fact, that one in the top right-hand corner, that's only about 4 or 5 days old, Lawson Thompson called me and wanted to sign for his dad for Father's Day. So I cut that out for him off of his logo. And I think there's a huge misconception with you got to be really good and it takes a long time on the design part. But while we were talking on the phone, he was saying, I don't want to hold you up over the summer and have you up there spending a lot of time drawing it. And I said, well, Lawson, I've already stole the logo off your Facebook and drawn it. How big do you want it so I can cut it? You know, so it was a pretty fast deal. But most of what we do is decorative stuff. You know, when we make parts off our machine too, but I decided to upgrade to a 4x8 machine, and I'm just not going to lie to you. I got tired of half of a sheet of metal hanging off the end of my table. When I was teaching at Blair in Southwest Oklahoma, we had a 4x4 table, and back when Chesapeake was still rolling really big, they had me cutting some 1/2-inch plate pipe reducers. And you don't think about how heavy a sheet of steel can get till you start talking about anything thicker than a 1/4 inch. But I think that 1/2-inch plate was like 680 pounds or something like that. Well, the sawhorse or whatever I was holding that edge of metal with out there on the end failed or broke. It's what happened. The weld broke. And it flipped, tore the gantry off my machine. Luckily, it didn't chop a kid's toe off or something. So I went ahead and did a 4x8 machine just so an entire sheet would fit. And it's just a whole lot handier than trying to cut something big and flip it around and things like that. So I do recommend doing your homework and finding that table that's right for you. I mean, I told you what's important to me: customer service and quality product and price. I mean, those were the big ones for me. Are there downsides? Yeah, because I have to put up with Ron. This is Ron, another one of the CERT guys. The third thing I want to talk about, and we're going to go through this way too fast, but how do I pay for it if you do want to get a new table? Amber was just telling me hers is one of those Ada tables. How old do you think that machine is?
They got it when Morton was there, like his first year, so probably 8 or 9 years old.
Okay, so we're easing up on a decade. And I would say it doesn't matter the quality of your machine. A decade of use and abuse in an ag shop is probably getting some wear and tear on a machine. Now, the good thing about plasma tables that I've found over the years, I have never had any trouble selling a used plasma table. When I got my CERT machine, I had a plasma cam, or the ag teacher at Fairview before me had a plasma cam, and it was in I don't know how many boxes. And we spent a couple days that summer putting it all back together. I made it run one time, cut one piece of metal, and said, okay, I feel comfortable advertising it as a working plasma table. We put it on Facebook, and it sold in, I would say, 30 seconds. I don't know. Another ag teacher bought it, and I got $5,000 for it. So I'm not saying you're going to have to scrap yours if you do decide to go with a newer, more modern table. But it's still, am I ballparking $25,000 to $30,000? Is that average price? I mean,
That's a little on the high end. But
okay.
You're in the neighborhood. It's
Okay.
still- Right now, things are going up faster than we can keep up with.
Sure. Steel prices, I'm sure, affect you a lot.
Electronics, everything's going up.
But I'll tell you what I noticed when I quoted my machine with CERT, any of those other machines, because almost everybody now wants to sell a fully assembled machine. When I bought my first Torchmate, I was just telling Ron this morning, 33 boxes is what that came in. And they just came UPS or USPS. I still remember the superintendent calling me saying, I don't know what the hell you ordered, but there are boxes all over my office. And they were just, little bitty cardboard boxes up to 50 pound or whatever the max weight is for UPS. And we had to sit there and put that thing together from the ground up. But a lot of the plasma tables now do come fully assembled. Well, Torchmate, as far as I know, still comes out of Reno, Nevada. And 4 years ago or 3 years ago, whenever I bought my table, the shipping on a Torchmate table was like $2,500, I think. And the shipping on a CERT table, I'm not even sure Jason charged me. If he did, it wasn't much.
We kind of include that in the training.
Oh, I see. I see.
In other words, on some of the guys, you can put credit
that's exactly how it went. Ron showed up with a trailer, backed his pickup in my shop, and we took a tractor and set it off, and actually went, well, we didn't go to cutting because something was wrong on mine. I don't remember what it was. Do you, Ron? That's been many moons.
I didn't know if we had the torch, the electrical setup for the wall mount, the plug. I don't know if there was something with that we didn't have.
Whatever it was, we set it off. It didn't work, and I just thought, well, he'll leave it here and he'll be back in a month. And nope, we stuck it right back on his trailer, and off he went. I don't know, 2 days later, he showed back up and had it back brand new and ready to go. So that goes back to the customer service for me. If you don't know about the lottery grant, has anybody ever written a lottery grant before? You have? Did you get one this year?
I just got one, and that's
Okay.
what I'm here for.
Oh, good. So awesome. That lottery grant, I'm not going to lie to you, and it's just my opinion. I'm not speaking for Career Tech or anything else. They put the due date for that, like during OYE, during your district show, whatever, on purpose, I think, just to keep as many ag teachers from writing it. But that is out there, and I think it is underutilized across the board by ag teachers because, you say what you want. My wife's not here. She's a STEM teacher, tech ed, whatever it's not tech ed anymore, TSA advisor. Those other programs struggle in comparison to ag ed, just because of what we can offer. So if you're not using that lottery grant, I highly recommend that. It is a little bit, you just wrote one. They're kind of a pain to write.
It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. Honestly, I figured it would be way worse than what it was.
Sure. The rubric, as long as you just keep in your mind that you write to the rubric, because that is 100% how they grade those. I've went and watched that, and they pull keywords straight off the rubric and look for them in your statements. So I'm not going to lie to you and tell you I'm any good at it. My wife is a grant writer too, and she does mine, and I just go get her Dr. Peppers and I don't know, rubber feet, whatever she wants, so she'll keep writing my grants. And we even cheat the system there at Fairview because we're a multiple ag teacher department, and we wrote one this year for an iron worker, and it's in my teaching partner's name, and he doesn't even know what an iron worker is, but we just take turns switching them around. So those of you that are in multiple teacher programs, keep that in mind too. If you're a single teacher program, you can only do that every other year, but in a multi-teacher program, you can alternate your teachers. You can only get one per program per year, I guess is what I should say. It's $15,000. That won't cover the cost of a machine. Even a 4x4, that won't get it, will it? But it sure takes the sting off of it. So let's say you average $25,000 on a 4x8 machine, and that may pretty close. So if you just do a kind of middle of the road plasma machine or plasma cutter on a 4x8 machine, is $25,000. That lottery grant takes up $15,000. That still leaves $10,000. And most of our superintendents, I understand, are not going to go out and say, yeah, I'm going to cover $10,000. We just don't live in that safe of an educational world where they're comfortable doing that. There are avenues that I've kind of helped people with on covering the rest of that. People always ask me, well, how much of that can I recoup selling stuff? And I think the sky's the limit on that. I have been on, had years where oil field companies have had me build parts, and it's been great. I've made $10,000 easy just building location address signs for Chesapeake, and then the situation we're in right now, I don't think any oil field companies would spend any money on anything they didn't have to. So the other avenues obviously would be your labor auction and things like that. But if your community has not had a working plasma table, I'm telling you, that first year is going to be huge if you cut out whatever your school's mascot is, however you do that. I would say on average you can expect about a $5,000 return just selling signs. And I would consider that $5,000 profit after you buy the steel. If that helps talk your soup into kicking in some money to help you. or even if you take it out of your activity fund, because that lottery grant does allow you to buy above $15,000. You just have to have your superintendent sign off that you've got a plan for the rest of that money. Does that make sense? So, do you guys have any questions on the lottery grant or how I've got that to work for me? I don't know if that's good or bad if people don't have questions. I mean,
That's what we did. We split it between 412 and activity and whatever.
well,
I'm using the other half on my Carl Perkins too. We have 3 other programs, so we rotate every 3 years. So I get the big blunt of all the programs, and so we're doing my lottery plus that Carl Perkins.
and that's a great, I should have mentioned that. I always forget about Carl Perkins because every school I've taught in, somehow the VOTEX have wound up with the Carl Perkins money, which happens in a lot of schools, especially the smaller schools. But if your school does have access to that and it rotates like that and you can line those up like she did, I think that's a great opportunity to get a table bought. The other thing I would probably consider is if you do have an active booster club, never hurts to kind of work through those guys if they're willing to make a donation or something like that. Even if it's one that they kind of want some return on investment from, if they want signage or something like that, in the future, that's just some options on how to take the sting away of that $25,000 because it is a substantial investment. But gosh, I would sure rather see you spend that money on something that's going to get used every day than a $15,000, $14,000 machine that's going to sit and basically be a paperweight in your shop.
We have the other one, and we've been using it forever. 15 years, but it'll work a week, and then it's broken down a week, and then it'll work a week, and so it's just kind of like a pain. And
Sure.
we get aggravated, and the kids obviously get aggravated.
Sure. So we're going to talk about just speaking about it working consistently, and I'm going to let Jason do that part. But if nothing else you get from today, if it's not in your budget to go buy a CERT machine or whatever, we are going to cover some Inkscape, and that's the design software that Jason and Ron suggested I use when I got my machine. And you even said it this morning. They said, well, it's a free download. And to me, that was like, oh my gosh, that's cheesy. That they're using a free download because Torchmate and that Piranha machine and even PlasmaCam had its own design software, that was kind of catered to that machine or that they had picked to use with their machine. And it costs money. That Torchmate had I think it was called a dongle. Is that right, Tanner? And that little flash drive was like $1,000 if you lost it. But you had to plug that thing in to make the machine work. I found out real quick that free download deal is pretty awesome because that's basically educational software for free for all your kids. Now they can't cut with that free download, but they can do all the design they want and they can all download it on their own laptop, or at least that's how I utilize it. Now we're one-to-one with Chromebooks. I think that's what those are called. Just cheapo Chromebooks. And we have got that to work some, but it's hard to get stuff to download on a Chromebook. So if you have laptops, I just have 10 old laptops that I have Inkscape on, and I check it out to some of the good kids if they want to take it home and draw and things like that. But to me, Inkscape has been the easiest one to use, and I have tried Design Edge and CorelDRAW, LibreCAD, is that the other one?
Yeah, LibreCAD's a CAD software, but they're very similar.
And LibreCAD's on my computer that came with my CERT machine. I'll just be honest with you, I've never even messed with it. I started on Inkscape, and to me, Inkscape has, not only do you get the training from the company, but there are hundreds of videos on YouTube for Inkscape. The other thing I like about it, my wife's a STEM teacher. She has a vinyl cutter and a laser engraver, and she does all of her design on Inkscape. So she has middle school kids, so when they get to me, a lot of them already know how to run Inkscape, which is a huge benefit, when I start taking them out to the plasma table. even the ones that don't, it's about a week for them to get really proficient at running the program, if they want to learn it. Some kids just don't ever drink the Kool-Aid, and they don't ever learn it. They got to want to. So I guess we're going to skip learning the ropes for a minute. What do you really want to know? Is there anything I can answer for you before we kind of jump into?
On my laser, I have a laser engraver,
Mm-hmm.
and I use Corel Draw. I'm
Yeah.
kind of hoping to use that now that you just threw that wrench in my whole thing. So, but you're saying that you would go with this other program, I mean, just by...
You can still use Corel Draw all you want.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'll tell you how, Miss, can I interrupt you for just a minute?
You go ahead. Yep.
Hey, one other thing I wanted to add, to mention, did you talk about the hypertherm aspect?
No.
I noticed a lot of ag, when we deliver machines and stuff, you guys have a lot of hypertherm products in your lab. But we are a hypertherm OEM dealer. All of our machines are specifically designed in the hypertherm aspect. And so with that being the case, when you're looking at a table, there's people like right now that we're delivering tables to that have 2 or 3 PowerMax 65. The power divider card, a CPC port in it, and a machine lead on it, and you have a plasma table machine. But Hypertherm also offers programs that you can apply for, and they will give you, they give out free PowerMax 65s and 85s a year to schools. So that's a big cost in the plasma tables itself, is the cost of getting a good power unit, and Hypertherm gives those away if you get applied to it.
Just to answer your question, there's 3 basic files involved in any cutting machine. All right. Now, some of them will kind of conglomerate the process, but the process is the same. I don't care whose machine it is. You'll have drawing files. Those will be your pictures and that you want to cut. And those will be in formats like SVG, if it comes from Inkscape and it's more artsy. That's standard vector graphics or scalable vector graphics. Or CAD, which will be DXF. You can use any program you want to get you those 2 file formats. We don't care. We give you Inkscape. If you have Corel Draw, you can use it. If you have AutoCAD, if you have SolidWorks, which is a $7,000 software, you can use any of those you want, as long as you can get this or that. All right? Your machines, whether it be SheetCam, Torchmate, they will operate under the same thing. Now, their design software starts off in one of these, and they'll run it down through all the process for you. We break the process back out so that you can use whatever software you want. All right? So you'll do this in your Inkscape or your Corel Draw or your Adobe Illustrator or your CAD software. You'll get a SVG or DXF file. Then you nest or can that. So nesting allows you to lay all those parts you want to cut out on a sheet. And for that, you'll use like SheetCam, which is about $150 a license. It'll work without a license, but to make code for the machine, you have to have a license. Or ProNest is another one. ProNest is the industrial level one.
Does ProNest take the place of SheetCam?
Yes, you don't need them both. You do one or the other. SheetCam is very inexpensive, but yet very powerful. So we put that on your control for you. And then you can also put it on any computer you want, and it's very low cost if you want more than one license. ProNest, if you were to buy it, would be about, the base package would be $6,000. The normal package is $12,500. ProNest is what all the industry uses. They probably have 60-some% of the market share in the United States. All right, ProNest works with us, and they give it to you for free if you're a high school, and you agree to teach it to your students. I think it's 200 and some licenses you can get every year. All right, so you take that, you run it through these, and that creates what we call a word address file. A word address is what the machine actually uses to cut your drawings. Every machine, whether it be a mill, a lathe, anything that has CNC in it, uses word address. And it's also known as M&G code. So like M numbers tells us like M03 fires the torch, M05 shuts off the torch. And then you have like G01 as a cutting move, X and Y coordinates where it's going to go. Every machine runs off that. All of them are slightly different, so I can't take a certain file that's word address and put it on a Torchmate and run it, or vice versa. But to get to that point is exactly the same in all machines. They may combine this for you with their software, but they're still doing it. So you can take ProNest or SheetCam and set it up to typically make files for any cutting machine. You have to get with them and get the right, what we call post file in them, but you can do it. But you just have to have the right word address. But what you can't do is take his file that he uses to cut on his machine, put it on your machine, and expect it to work. It will not. You can take his drawing file that he created, run it through your nesting software, and create files for your machine. Is that clear as mud? So I don't care. We give you Inkscape because it's free, and if you really want to know the truth, 99% of all the other software uses Inkscape in the background. You just don't see it. All right? But you can install it on any computer you want at no cost. All right, it runs on Linux. It runs on MacBooks. It will not run on iPads. I wish it would.
Well, what I figured out, even with laser, is whatever program that they kind of use, I tend to go toward that program. Because when we start talking, it's a lot easier to talk to somebody that knows what the program.
And Corel Draw is a very powerful one. It's a paid version of Inkscape. The Adobe Illustrator is another one that some people use. It's very powerful. But what they do is just they make it, I'm trying to think of the right word, a little bit more user-friendly, and it's designed for graphics, though, for making internet graphics. So what I find is once you learn SheetCam, it's actually easier. And there's tons and tons and tons of how-tos on the internet. Is the other reason we chose those. Yeah. All right, I'm sorry, Shane.
No, you're good.
Your turn. That's weird.
That's weird. Does that follow you? It does get a little trippy. So I want to show them this when I answer the phone, and then I'm going to let you talk again, Jason. I'm
Go
sorry
ahead.
to steal it back from you.
No, I was planning on giving it back to you. I'll put this in front of you.
So that Inkscape, like I said, free download. Stillwater's internet is not real user-friendly with downloading new things, but you just Google Inkscape, inkscape.org. There are some other ones on there that when I was downloading it on this computer yesterday, that kind of give you the runaround. But as long as it's inkscape.org, 100% a free download. Download now. And you said it doesn't work on Apple stuff?
It works on MacBooks, but it does not work on iPads.
Oh, on iPads. So you kind of run into the Chromebook issue there, I think, don't you?
I really don't know why. I mean, the operating systems are the same between the two, but I can't get it from my iPad.
What they told me on the Chromebook, pretty much there's no internal storage.
Yeah, it's supposed to work on Chromebook if you read Chromebook stuff.
Oh,
But you're not the first one that told me it didn't, but I do have other people who are.
well, and some of the Chromebooks do. I think it may be more to do with the cheapo Walmart Chromebooks that we're trying to use at the school. But anyway, free download off the website, super simple to download. I have an Inkscape open here, but the ag teacher at Tipton, Mr. White, is my old ag teacher, and he calls me all the time, but he was a very typical phone call I get on using Inkscape, and I don't think Mr. Boatman can tell you this, and when I was talking to Kurt Murray about teaching this class, he said I ought to tell this story. Should you worry about copyright things and trademark things? If I'm making a sign to sell at my labor auction, and I want to make a Pistol Pete, I'm probably going to just make a Pistol Pete and sell him there in Fairview. Would I take him to a craft show? Probably not, and sell him. So I think it needs to be more along the lines of where is that going, and are you going to get in a pickle? Because you certainly could. The only one you wouldn't is, I guess, the FFA emblem. You are, as an ag teacher, licensed to use that FFA emblem. But if it is copyrighted or trademarked, maybe you should probably think about how you're going to distribute that. The only reason I say that, when I started teaching, we used the Cross Canadian Ragweed puzzle logo for hats. That was 2007 in Blair, Oklahoma, way down in southwest Oklahoma. Who would have ever thought anybody would have noticed that? And one day, just out of the blue, I got a call from Cross Canadian Ragweed's manager that I would not make any more hats with that logo, that I was being mailed a cease and desist or whatever. And so, yeah, some people take that trademark deal really, really serious. And I don't know if there's anything they could ever do about it. I just thought, well, we already made that hat, we'll do something different next time. So whenever they say, how do I take something off the internet, I always try to tell them at least that. You know, there is always that risk that something could happen. So Inkscape is pulled up here, and my laptop makes everything really small. Were you going to go over Inkscape with them? Okay. Well, I just want to show them really quick. Like Lawson's thing when he said, I don't want you spending a long time drawing on there. Most of the time, when people tell me they're having trouble with files, I don't want to buy software that's $150 because I got into that when I had a Torchmate, 10 years ago. I spent quite a bit of money on a flash drive that had some pre-made artwork, and 90% of it was mudflap ladies or cowboys smoking on the fence, stuff I never would have used. I'll show you exactly where I get my files now. If you go to Google Images, and I tell kids all the time the keywords I use are silhouette, and I'll show you why.
We started pulling over, like my laser engraver stuff worked on our plasma cam. I mean, you gotta obviously tweak it a little bit because of they're backwards. But they work pretty well.
So anything that it isn't a pay for, I guess, and as long as it's not crazy colored or on a checkerboard background, is pretty relatively easy to copy. I mean, if you just go to copy image and open it in Inkscape, I am going to have to change a little bit. Inkscape, and Jason can probably tell you why, and when he goes through how to use it, it automatically reverts back to millimeters. I don't know why.
See, millimeters or pixels.
Yeah, millimeters or pixels. And if you don't remember to change that and you draw something, it will not be the size you want it. I always set my width and height on Inkscape to 48 by 96 because that's a sheet of metal. I don't think that matters, does it, Jason?
No.
Other than it just kind of shows you in retrospect to a sheet of metal. I mean,
Gives you a little bit more idea of how big something is.
yeah. So if I were to paste that, that pig that I just took off of the internet, and right click on it and do a trace bitmap, apply. And I can delete that one that I took off the internet, and I can set view back to outline, and I now have a workable file. I don't know how long that took on my computer that I'm used to with it, that's on my CERT table. That takes me way less time because I'm not fighting a mouse and all that stuff. But that seems like it's the biggest hiccup that people have, and I just wanted to show you, I guess, for ease of use, that is something that is not near as big a deal as you think it is. When I had a Torchmate table, I would copy and paste pictures in, but I had to sit with my mouse and try to redraw it or retrace it, and it took forever. But
And there are some if you try to bring in a picture of a mountain, like a mountain view, that's going to not convert very well. Sometimes those are easier to actually trace in than it is to try to convert.
Let me find one
Those
that,
two programs are pretty much alike. I mean, because my Corel Draw looks pretty much like.
Yeah, Corel Draw is they're running on.
so you see how that OSU logo has got a fans in the background? A lot of times things like that, and watch, that's going to convert like no problem, isn't it?
When you don't want it to, then
And it did. A lot of times if there's background on it, it tries to pick that up too, and so there's some things that it just won't work on, but gosh, a lot of stuff it does. And it is really easy. And it would probably be really easy to get in trouble for infringing on someone's trademark or copyright. I will tell you that, but
if it has a little R symbol down below it, those are the ones you can get in trouble. It's the trademark symbol and it has to stay with you. So you have to get permission, like that OSU symbol that you pulled up there. If you get OSU's permission, you can do anything you want with it. But if you were to sell it without their permission, they could actually come back and make you pay for royalty. A lot of colleges working with high schools, they'll work with you, but you let them know. Hey, this is what I'm doing, is this okay with you? Like K-State, where I went to school, I'm not going to hate that down here, but it's all over Oklahoma. The power cat that they use, I see it everywhere in Oklahoma. There's like 10 high schools that use the same one. And so, I don't know if they called and got permission, they do.
I think this one is going to mess up. I think I can make it mess up. Because it had the background, they did that on purpose so you wouldn't swipe their logo. They put either a textured background or a labeled background, so when you try to trace it, that's what you wind up with. So
Some of those you can actually buy, pay a few bucks for it, and then it comes in.
I've noticed Etsy
Yeah.
has a lot of those. Etsy has a ton, and they're like $4.
They'll come with a little license file that says you have the rights to use
Or they'll just take a picture of it with the glare. That glare will mess with you every time if you're trying to pull something off. So, would you guys like to go through some basic Inkscape? Would that be beneficial to y'all? Jason, you teach it.
it.
I teach it to 8th graders all the time, but
All day.
you want me to plug you in on your computer?
You
Or
can just do that. Yeah.
the white one, right?
Yeah.
I get frustrated because kids are so much better at computer stuff than I am, But when I learned Plasma Cam, that was the very first one I ever messed with in college. Or I guess I was teaching because it was a professional development just like this. I was in that class with Larry Long, and I thought I was bad. You guys may not even remember him, but he was like 70 at the time, and he didn't have a clue. He didn't know what the mouse was, I don't think. But
The one thing that we try to do is train you very well. All right? We offer free classes. I just got done teaching one Washington High School last week. So I went down there for 2 days and invited everybody to come. It's free. And we go through just like we were training you how to use your machine. From Inkscape, SheetCam, ProNest, the machine software itself, and they're free. We're trying to do it 3 times a year, spread it out across the state. We may do it more than one in Sepulpa, but we do more often because it's only 15 minutes from the shop. I don't care if you have my machine or not, you're welcome to come. Of course, it's going to be tailored toward my machines, because that's you know what I do. But, feel free to show up at any one of them. You gotta let us know first, because they're usually limited to how many people we can have in the classroom. So like Inkscape is real simple. Like if I want to make a parking lot sign, I'll select my little square tool here, and I'll just basically draw me a square. I really don't know what size that square is yet, I don't care. I just get the basic shape out there. Then I pick my arrow tool and I highlight it if it's not already. And now it tells me up here, I've already got mine set to inches, so that square is 2.113 inches by 2.046 inches. I don't know if y'all can see that up there.
Is there a way to zoom that?
I can focus it a little bit. Yeah, it just ain't gonna come in clear. But right here, those are the dimensions. So I just type on what I want. So let's say I'm building a, parking lot sign. I roughly wanted the size of a sheet of paper. So 8.5 by 11. I zoom out, and that's basically my rectangle that I want, the size I want it to be after I'm done cutting. Right, now I don't have any cool pictures to put in there, so I'm just going to use text. So I'm just going to click over here, make a little text window, and I'm going to type reserved for. Now somebody give me a name.
Travis Jenkins.
Can't spell. Travis. Did I spell that right?
Wow, J-I-N-K.
Like that? Alright. Don't worry about what size it is. I'll worry about that in a minute. Alright. So I can make it bigger or smaller after I type it in there. I'm going to highlight it because there is a couple of things I want to always double check. One is what font am I using? And then I also want to center it. And then I always want to make sure it's bold.
The only reason for bold is when you do go to cut out, I mean, the less intricate you can make it, the less chance of something falling out, things like that.
Yeah, the fatter the letters, the better. Oh, I made my words a little bit too big for my sign. That's no problem. Now, you see I put it on top of there, I can't see it because they're both black. Alright, color doesn't matter because we're going to cut it. So I can either change this to white or I can change the text to red. So what I usually do is change it to a different color. Now I can see them both.
And see, I usually just go to view and change it to outline.
Yeah, that works the same. A lot of people like it like this because it looks like a sheet of steel they're getting ready to cut.
Sure.
So I highlight them both, and then I come down here to my line and distribute, and I center it that way, and then I center it this way. Now that reserved for Travis Jenkins is right out of the middle. I'm a little bit fat. That T and that S is probably going to be a little bit too close. So. Just the text here. I'll make it just a little smaller. And again, I can rotate this rectangle, do anything I want there if I wanted to do that to it. So now I highlight them both again. Alright, so that's what I want it to look like, only I want the red to be cut out. I can actually export it just like this, and typically it will cut just like that. Now, sometimes the CAMing software gets a little bit confused on what to do with the text. So I can actually cut it out here just like I would in a real sign. So I can highlight them both. And come up here to path and say difference. Now I just literally cut that reserved for Travis Jenkins out of that sign. They're no longer text separate for one piece. That, when I export it, will be exactly like that. The one thing you'll notice though is like my D and my R and this R and that O, the centerpiece will fall out because it's not a stencil, but I can fix that. So I can make me another little rectangle. I don't care what color it is. I'm bring it in here. Oops. Get it about where I want it, and I can highlight them both again by holding down my shift key and clicking on them both. You notice that one's still selected. I don't know if you can see it up there, but that one's still got a highlighted area around it, and so does my big square. I can come up to my path, and I can union and then put it back in there. So now, that O will be cut in 2 pieces. So I just made a stencil on it. I can do the same thing for the R's and whatever other letters I want. Typically, once I get my first rectangle done, I'll copy it, so I just have to paste it back in there. Zoom in.
Where the students trip up the most to me on Inkscape, you can't use your mouse to move around. You use the mouse wheel and control and shift. I mean, those 3 buttons are how you like navigate around. And I don't know why, but it takes kids a little bit to figure that out.
There is a panning tool that you can drag it, but
See, I've never even found it.
after you learn it, it's pretty. I use my mouse pad to zoom in and out, and then I usually just drag the sign around because I don't care where it's at on the screen. So I could go through each one of those and do the same thing I did for that R. On that R, that D, that R, that R, that A. The A's I usually go ahead and put it at an angle, and so on and so forth. Once I'm done, I just save it. Keep looking up there, can't read it. So save. It's going to ask me what type of file. And you can use Inkscape, SVG, or plain SVG, doesn't matter. I just give it a name. Oops. I don't have my USB stick with me. Put it back on my desktop with all the other junk. Alright. Once I have it to that point, you can open it up in whatever nesting software that you would want to use. Somewhere on here she can. Right click, new part. Stop. Oops. Forgot to change the scale. And there's my sign for Travis. Now from here I'd give it an operation and I'd send it out to machine and it would cut it. So there I want. Use this ain't no lead in, lead out. 0.2 overcut. Now the green lines are where it's going to cut. And it doesn't match. So the green lines are where the torch is actually going to follow. The white line was the original drawing. It offsets it by the kerf dimension. You all understand what kerf is? Whenever I'm cutting anything with any cutting utensil, so like if I have a board and I have a saw, and I cut through that board with that saw, I remove so much of the material. That material is called a kerf. That space left after you cut. So if I'm going to cut a board exactly 10 foot, so I take my tape measure and I measure it out there to 10 foot and I make me a line. Do I want to cut right down the center of that line? No, because then my board would actually be a little shorter than 10 foot. So I actually cut to the outside of that line to make sure my board is exactly what I measured. The same is true with any piece of metal. We shift over half the width of the cut so that when we're done, your dimensions are exactly what you wanted them to be. The green line is after the kerf is applied. Does that make sense? The arrows also give me a cut direction. So on this outside, it's going to go this way. On that D, it's going to go that way. See that? And here on the outside, come on, zoom in. You see it's going to go around it that way. Does cut direction matter with plasma? Ron, do you know the answer? You can't hear me.
I'm
Yeah, I'm just
sorry.
picking on you.
I thought my mother-in-law was in there.
Cut direction does matter with plasma. You always want to go around the outside clockwise and around anything on the inside counterclockwise. Does anybody know why we would do that? Mainly because of the gas that's coming out of the torch. If you ever run a mill or a router, they'll tell you that you want your leading edge, the edge going into my part to be going that direction, because that's the leading edge of the tool. But the gases are the same. They come out of the torch swirling. We want to make sure the leading edge is on the clean side. You're always going to have more bevel on your scrap than you are on your good side if you cut the right direction.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
I've been cutting forever.
On thinner materials, you'll never notice. So like if you're cutting 20 gauge or 14 gauge, you'll probably never see it. If you get up to 1/4 inch, you start seeing a big difference. Now high definition torches have eliminated a lot of that, but it's still there.
Yeah, we just got a call last week from a customer who's having the same problem and found out he'd been cutting in the wrong direction since he had the machine.
Yeah. And all of his parts had bevel and all of his scrap was nice and clean. So he's like, what's going on? We're cutting backwards. Cutting backwards? Yeah.
How did you change that?
How do I change that when I open up that operation? I almost always make sure it's set to reverse the cut direction.
Okay.
Right there. It's not readable up there. Because for some reason, She-Cam by default will do it backwards every time. So I just check that box, and then I always double check. ProNest automatically knows. And I don't have I broke my ProNest yesterday trying to update it. So,
You have to set it backwards every time.
yes, usually if I set it backwards, it actually cuts right.
Where he's at right there, you can preset your thicknesses of metal, or I did. I actually think that's back when, gosh, who would have been the tech that helped me set my machine up?
Daniel.
Daniel. No,
Ethan, I think, came out to you.
was it? He helped me set up, like he said, what are your most common ones? So I have
Yeah.
14 gauge, 12 gauge, 10 gauge, and 1/4 inch.
And that's off these tools right here.
And it automatically, once you set them as tools, you set your speed and your voltage to them. You just select your thickness of metal and it's already all set.
That's what we set up these tool charts. So like for 16 gauge, 45 amp, you're going to run the curve for 0.05. You're going to run the machine at about 249 inches per minute. You're going to delay on your pierce 0.1 seconds. You're piercing at 0.15 inches off the plate. That one's for routers, we don't use it. Your initial cut height, of which they have the word initial set there, is 0.06 inches off the plate. But your arc voltage is what actually runs your height control. It's set to 125. So the voltage is how we determine how far off the plate we are. All plasmas work that way if you have height control. So they come down, they back up to pierce height, and then they pierce. We sit there for 0.1 seconds, and then we move it down to the initial cut height, 0.15. Machine starts moving. Once the machine gets up to speed, we turn on the arc voltage height control, and then we follow the plate. So if the plate works up, we go right over it. So if you want to change how high you're running off the plate around your cut, you don't change your cut height, even though that's what it seems like. That's why I wish you had the little word out there in front that says initial cut height. They don't. You actually change your arc voltage. The lower the voltage, the closer to the plate it runs.
Earlier versions of height control worked off like ohm resistance,
Capacitance.
and those ohmic clips on the end of your torch would get dirty, and even like cell phone interference would mess with it. When I had a Torchmate one time, I kept having height control trouble, and it was the fan I had plugged in there on the table, you know, to keep me from sweating my tail off while I was out there cutting. It was just, I guess, throwing dirty electricity or something, and That's what was messing with my height control.
So I'm gonna save this file and show it to you, what the word address looks like, as soon as I find my desktop.
I won't lie to you and say that's not intimidating the first time you watch it, what he just did. But I'm telling you, when the tech guy left, when they did my training, I said, I don't remember anything. And all of it was on YouTube. I mean, every bit of it.
Every bit that I know, I learned off YouTube.
Well, I'll just tell you, I've got a question thing out here that I like. Whenever you're designing like your words and flipping your, like, with the center of the R or the D,
Yeah.
that right there is 10 times easier than what I have to do out here. where I
Yeah,
have to
on Design
flip
Edge.
every single one out.
So the,
Design it, I mean, it's terrible. It drives me.
we're working on my own font so that it'll already be done for you. But I learned the hard way that that is a major undertaking, creating your own font. So I've been working on it for a little over a year. So the goal is, though, once I get that done, everybody will have just be able to type the words in there, and they're already stenciled. There is programs you can download, fonts you can download. As long as they work with Windows, they'll work with Inkscape. You just install them in your Windows that are already stenciled. The only problem is every letter is stenciled, whether it needs it or not. So the C will be stenciled.
That's the MASH font.
Yeah.
Ron's watched enough MASH.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What?
The MASH font, where every letter is stenciled or, stenciled out whether it needs it or not.
So,
I'm good with what I do.
so the word address, every machine that's a CNC runs off some sort of word address. They'll all be slightly different, but the principles are the same. So like this M63P0, that turns on and off the height control. M05 makes sure the torch is off at the beginning of the program, so if you stop the program in the middle, it doesn't start by firing the torch right away. G17 tells it that we're going to work on the X and Y plane. All right. G20 says we're in inch units. Let's skip down here a little bit. This is where we're setting all your curves that we talked about earlier, your feed rate and your voltage. We set that for you right into the control, so you don't even have to program it as long as you use the right tools. Down here, you can see where we're actually cutting the first letter of the sign. So the M03 S1 fires the torch, pierces. This is a arc to the left. G03s are arc to the left. The X and the Y are my end point. The I and the J are the center of the circle. That's following. G02 is arc to the right, same principle. G01 is a straight line at cut speed. So it's going to move to a position of X of 4.73 and a position of Y of 5.84. All the way down until it finishes. And then you're going to have an M05 at the bottom, right there. That ends that cut. And then it goes on to the next one. G00s are rapid transfers. Now, why do I tell you all that? Do I expect you all to remember, know all that? No. No, I don't. But the main thing is that's why you can't run his code on your machine, because that's going to be slightly different. Every company, we try to follow a standard. There's actually a standard out there that says these are the codes you should use, and we try to follow that too as much as we possibly could. But most companies don't. Sheetcam has their own weird one. And they did that to make it so that I can't make programs run on their machine. We try to choose as much as possible a generic one. The only thing is there's some codes that we have to create ourselves. Like for instance, all this right here, those aren't standard codes. We had to create those ourselves because we're setting data in the control. And so some programs on other machines will run on ours, but I can't guarantee it. I'm not going to make any promises. If you get a file from his and you bring it to ours, yes, it'll work. Now, back when I first started, I spent a lot of time writing CNC code by hand.
Basically, the only difference, though, from machine to machine on ours, Jason, we use power splice, correct? Is they've got it set up
For a 45 amp, you don't have to make sure you have 45
And that's
amps.
not hard to change.
There's a lot more to sheet cam I can show you. I don't want to bore you. So what would you like me to show you?
I kind of wonder, since it's such a small group, if we don't bust it like 3 and 2 and just let them play on Inkscape a little bit.
Sure, I'll sit behind him and help him.
Don't want to do that, just for, I mean, we have
How much time do we have?
an hour. And I still want to take them out and show them the machine work.
Yeah.
Does anybody want to play on Inkscape? Just kind of get through some of the basic stuff?
Or ask questions about it.
Yeah.
I download Inkscape, will that transfer directly since I've got the design, edge, whatever, like, can I use that?
Does Plasma Cam use sheet cam? Is your Plasma Cam table, so it goes straight from design edge to?
Yeah. So what they're doing is actually camming it themselves. So they've got,
This reminds me of the torch mate setup like on my computer and what I was designing in, but then I would have to transfer it over. And it was easier to design like this, whereas the plasma cam is harder to design, but you don't have to transfer it, it's all right there.
yes. And they're actually doing the transforming for you in the background. And you can set up Inkscape to do that too, if you wanted to. I can actually go in there and write an MG code creator for Inkscape. But I find that no matter how, and we can actually change it so it looks like CERT software if we wanted to. But when doing that, all we do is we may make one function better, but we make it a whole lot less universal. So we decided, if you go out into the industry, if you go over to Matrix in Tulsa, they do it exactly like this. Only they, instead of using Inkscape, they use CAD programs. CAD is basically, if you want exact dimensions, like if I'm building flanges, that's where CAD comes in. So I want it to be an exact 4x4 square, and I want these holes in exactly the right place. I wouldn't use SheetCam. I would use some sort of CAD, like LibreCAD, QCAD, AutoCAD. There's a million of them. And there's hundreds of them that are free. And so then we start off in CAD, then they would bring it through ProNest, and then they would cut it. ProNest and SheetCam are designed to save you plate. So in other words, instead of going out and cutting one, going out the next day and cutting another, going out the third day and cutting the fourth one, and they're all spread out and you're using up a lot of sheet. The idea is that you cut 10 or 15 parts at a time. So I can, if I wanted to cut more than one of these, select my nesting tool. I can duplicate them both. And I can go on and fill the whole sheet. I don't have to fill the whole sheet with one part. I can bring in other parts and nest them right around those. So the goal is instead of wasting material every day, I'm optimizing how much I get out of it. ProNest does that for me automatically. I literally would just tell it how many of them I wanted, hit nest, and it's done.
So on that topic, I always think about when I taught at Blair, there was a locksmith there in Altus that had, back before plasma tables were common, he had one, and he was a cheapskate. I probably grew up poor farmer like some of us did. He had categorized his sheets of steel, like had slides, he put them all in, and he had made some kind of software where he knew exactly how much room he had left on pieces of metal. So if when somebody would come in and order something, he had it cataloged, that he knew where to pull from.
When you get into full ProNest, the full package and modular ProNest, it's within the industry where production is the big key. It keeps track of a whole lot more information than what you're doing at this level.
Sure.
It will tell you, it'll save your remnants, so just like what you're saying. So all this part of the sheet up here is left over, it'll remember that. And then you come in and call that remnant up and finish and put it along.
And the estimating part of it, you can actually, you can integrate and do stuff where you're doing project A, such as a red iron building, and you've got X number of parts you're going to be cutting out. It can do you an estimate, tell you the number of sheets of each particular steel you're going to need, how many parts, and you can do complete estimating program if you get into it. But again, it's like Jason said, it starts out with a base model that's a Chevette with a 4-cylinder, and then when you get up to a Lamborghini on the top end, by the time you're done doing modules, you can be at 20+ thousand inch, Jason.
Yes.
And not all of that. They got design fab that's specifically for ductwork, which you wouldn't need, and it'll do a lot. It's a very powerful tool, but it also has some limitations.
And the other main idea, the reason we keep it broke out into 3 separate programs, is because one of the goals is to teach your kids how to do this. So with ProNest, they can actually get certified through Hypertherm, saying, I know how to run ProNest. When they get out of high school, they can go show that certification to steel shops anywhere and show that they're qualified to do this. By running a sheet cam, no one in the industry runs a sheet cam. We would tear it apart in about 3 days. So having a certification that I can run a sheet cam is not going to do much good.
Where it does, small town western Oklahoma, we have like Bramco beds there in town, and a machine shop there in town. And those guys they use sheet cam. They're not a huge operation.
Oh, I'm sorry, I said sheet cam, but I meant plasma cam.
Oh yeah, plasma cam. They would.
You're one of the things that you gotta, and you're gonna think this analogy is weird and stuff, but I'm an ex-drill sergeant. And back whenever I was actually doing it, we taught people to use a compass. And people back then could go from point A to B. Now the kids nowadays all use GPS to get from point A to B. If you start kids on Inkscape and sheet cam, and you have the availability of ProNest, but you work them on this, they're learning how to use a compass hands-on, and they're getting a lot of details that they would skip if they get to ProNest. The reason that's so important is because as long as they know those details on how to get to point A to B with the compass before they go to the GPS, then they're more apt to be better operators because they're going to see things that are going on with the machine and have a better understanding of the process, which is the key to it, is the process. There are a lot of operators out there that I call them, and I don't mean they're idiots. Because everything's been simplified. They're used to bringing the file, putting it in, pulling up the file, hitting enter, going here, and turning on the machine, and does it. So when they have problems, the cut quality issues are happening and things like that, they don't know where to start looking to resolve it. You're teaching kids at an early age, or young men and young women at an early age, the basic fundamentals of the process and artwork, so when they get out and actually get into production and they start having headaches, they look like heroes because they figure out, oh, the machine's not good. And the bad thing about ProNest is everything that's done on ProNest overrides everything out on that Opcon. And we had a customer up in Kansas that had one of our machines, and they've been operating it for a couple of years without calling us. And they called Jason and said, hey, we're having it's just gone on long enough. Our cut quality stinks. And we sent a tech up there, and in ProNest, it gives you the option, like post-processor, that's telling the machine what pair of scissors you're using to cut the product with. They had selected 45 amp. So it didn't matter what they drew, the machine was trying to cut it at 45 amp. They could have 200 amp consumables in the machine. And it was, you know what I'm saying? So of course they're cut quality. And that's where it's important that you understand what ProNest can do. And so when a machine's not cutting right, don't assume it's this machine. Stop, pull out another file that you know has worked, put it in, see if it cuts. If that problem's not there, then it's something that was done in ProNest that's affecting everything.
Hypertherm builds ProNest. They bought it years ago. They actually have online courses, part of what they give you guys to teach. The kids can go online, fill out, do the information, and they can get certified from Hypertherm if they know how to operate ProNest. You can also go on to the Plasma Institute, and they can go into Hypertherm's PowerMax section and get certified so that they know all about it.
Yeah, the Hypertherm Cutting Institute is what it's called.
Cutting Institute, to get certified so that they know everything about Hypertherm plasma. We're working working on the same thing for the actual cutting machine itself. Hopefully within the next year, we have a course you can teach, they can take a test and say, yes, I know the basics of operating a cutting machine. By themselves, those are useless. But in the steel industry, don't being able to go into somebody and say, hey, I've already studied these, it just gives them a leg up on my own. Road techs are doing it similar, but they are not offering these yet. Trying to get it in road techs now. The goal is to give kids options without having to go to college. Now, am I against college? Some. I went to college, I got my degree, I don't use it. I had $35,000 worth of debt when I graduated. It took me 6 years to pay it off. They get $30,000 worth of debt the first year now, easily. That's with the scholarship. So, colleges are changing. So we're trying to provide, a lot of people now in the steel industry aren't hiring people out of college. They're hiring out of robotics and out of high school and they're training people themselves. Now, am I against college? No. There's definitely some things you have to go to college for. If you want to be an engineer, go to college. If you want to be a doctor, for sure go to college. If you're going to be an ag teacher, good idea to go to college. If you're going to work at McDonald's, don't go to college. And a lot of the steel shops are the same way. They're looking for welders. They're looking for guys who know how to do this. They don't care whether they got a college degree. They would much rather have a kid that says, I know how to do this, and I'm willing to be taught to come in than they would have to. So believe it or not, a lot of guys that come out of four-year institutions with a degree, they don't like to be taught.
Well, the good thing about the cutting institution is they have literally hundreds of videos of different aspects that last anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, and they would actually behoove you, because back to it's easier for you to teach this to the kids if you understand the process. There's even a short 15-minute video that goes over ohmic, pierce height, cutting height, transition height, why they're important. Most people don't realize the importance. All your ohmic's doing is telling them where it's at in reference to the plate. But pierce height, if you'll ever notice, your pierce height is always higher than your cut height. You ever wondered why? Well, primarily the reason is the same thing. You don't get your acetylene torch and take it down and put it right on top of the steel and start blowing a hole through it. You preheat it, and you get it up high enough and you blow a hole. You're holding the tip up high enough so that the splatter doesn't plug your holes. Well, that's what pierce height is. It gets the torch height high enough so that you're not plugging and destroying your consumables and doing that. Then it comes down to cut height. But the transition part is how fast it's moving it. That where he was showing the transition code going over there, how high do you want to raise it to move it there? Because the less you have to raise it, the faster it goes. But are you cutting parts that are going to pop up that are going to get within that range? So if you understand those, it's easier for you to understand it and teach to the students. And those are all on the Hyperthermal Cutting Institute.
So before we go out to the shop, did you have anything?
I got off on a subject.
Oh, my stool's gonna kill me. I hope I didn't break that.
Remotes are cheaper to replace than the robot. You're okay.
Yeah, I think we're good. Back to talking to your administration about buying a machine, and I just remembered a conversation I kind of had with mine. So we have our plasma table, we have a cold saw, we have an iron worker, we have all this money we've sank into machine tools in our shop. The reason I think I can justify that, we live in small town western Oklahoma. If those kids want to live in Fairview the rest of their life, they're going to have to find a job that's suited for Fairview, Oklahoma. Bramco, Waldon, the machine shop there in town, Livingston, all of the industry we have there in town, they don't want to hire guys from California. Why? Why would they rather hire a hometown kid? Because they're going to stay. They want to hire somebody that they can train and can move up in the company and that they don't have to replace in 2 or 3 years. So the reason I can justify anything I teach them industry-wise is because I know that's job security for those kids that want to stay in Fairview, Oklahoma. They can get a good job, they can support their family in a respectable job and stay right there at home. Just like Jason said, a lot of those industry jobs are not for the college-bound students. Now, maybe in the managerial parts, but I just know from the ones I deal with quite a bit, they want to hire the kids that have come out of my ag program or even out of our tech center, because for one, they know how to work, and two, they've problem solved with me. I mean, they were there when we got the plasma table. They learned it as I learned it, all that good stuff. So,
And most of us are just looking for proactive people.
yep.
If you find me somebody who, I don't know how to do that, I know we'll figure it out. And if you find me somebody who's willing to step in there and figure something out, that's what I'm looking for. I'll train you, teach you what you need to know.
And even if it's not exactly the same, I kind of go back to what Tanner said a while ago about Inkscape being similar to something he had used before. Once you've got kind of familiar with the design side of this, with the cut side of this, I think it's not completely relearning the wheel every time you have to switch to a different one, I guess is what I would say. Maybe sheet cam's not what I would use if I went to work for a steel company right now, but it probably wouldn't take me near as long to learn ProNest as it would just starting from scratch, if that makes sense.
ProNest is very simple to use. Don't get me wrong, it looks complicated. It takes a few days to kind of get oriented, but I can do what I did in SheetCam there and ProNest in 5 minutes. And then it also, like he was doing with his pig, you know, he brought it in and then converted it. ProNest will do that for you. Just bring it straight in.
And just
Show you ProNest, but I literally broke it yesterday. Didn't have time to fix it.
I was a little concerned when I started because I didn't do it exactly the way that the kid that trained me did it. Just like I said, I had to go back and watch YouTube because I went to college and I don't want to learn. I don't.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be concerned with this being intimidating because I'm telling you, anything, yeah, I think you could go to YouTube right now and put in Inkscape basics and it would have 10 different videos just going over the basic layer or the basic functions.
I didn't even cover hardly anything, but I spend 3 hours when you come to a class. I sit down, we sit down with SheetCam and we spend 3 hours doing what I did up there with the fine-tooth comb. And then I encourage them all to bring their laptops so they can sit down there and play with theirs while I'm playing with them on the screen.
And I would say it would be worth, if nothing else, download it at home and just play with it some and see if it's something that could be beneficial to you, even if it's not something you're using on your table at home. But even things like that square that he had pulled up, I mean, there's, well.
I like the fact that it's so easy to get your measurements on this one, because that's the biggest pain on that.
Well, you have to line up the dots,
Yeah.
and you have to,
Like-
you gotta trace everything, and
You can count the dots, or they have what they call snaps.
Mm-hmm.
So but you could write a book as thick as a dictionary for snaps and how to use it.
And that's part of the reason why we just stuck with Inkscape. It's like, why do we want to
Why
recreate?
reinvent the wheel?
Yeah, they've already done it, and it's free.
That, and it's hard to see up there, that is a padlock. I bumped my head on that a few times because you can lock that padlock or unlock it. If it's locked and I resize it, all it does is save the aspect ratio to where if that was unlocked and I went to resize it, it would stretch or whatever, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And back on the trademark, the three most protected animals in the United States are one, the presidential seal, two, the 4-H clover, and three, the FFA animal. They all have the same exact protection. Alright, you guys can do anything you want within reason with the FFA animal because you're teachers, you have the right, so you can make them, you can sell them. You cannot change them. You know, you can cut your names out of them, stuff like that, but you cannot change like the eagle or the corn. You can't make your own FFA. Same way with 4-H clover. There's actually specifications on how that clover has to be. It has to have the right size H's in it. Can you cut them and give them? Sure. All right. You can't cut them and sell them without their permission and stuff like that. FFA emblem, you guys got a lot more freedom because you are a teacher and part of the FFA.
Has anyone ever cut the FFA emblem? You have cut it on the plasma table?
Yeah, we have.
So if you do it with all its detail, you have to make it huge. So, he said you can't change it. I dumb it down every time I cut it.
Yeah, that's not what I mean. You can take you don't have to cut everything that's on there. You just can't change the corn, that's a cross section
Right.
piece of corn. You can't add stuff to that. You can't make your own version of the corn. You can delete things. You can modify it so it cuts better. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about I don't like the way that looks. I'm going to make my own FFA emblem. And you can't do that.
And I always wondered, when I was at Blair, they used the Boston Red Sox B. That couldn't have been legal, but the whole school used it,
It happens all over.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about. There's several high schools in Oklahoma that use Kansas State's PowerCAD as their
Yep.
But the B, I think there's fonts that you can actually purchase.
Probably. See, the Fairview F, we paid some guy a lot of money for the Fairview F. And it's, I can't even remember the name of the font now. But it is a font. He just kind of stretched it. He changed it enough you can't call it that font, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I guess we just did that for legal reasons because it probably would have been a lot easier just to find that font and say, I like that F. But
I think your smaller schools can get away with it a little more, but like Stillwater, if they change their logo,
they pay someone to do it, yeah.
big process. So.
And I know the schools too work with, OSU tends to work pretty well with ag departments. So I'm sure if you wanted to sell that OSU emblem, you get a hold of the right person. I couldn't tell you who it was and say, this is what we want to do. And, they may ask you to send them one to make sure it meets their, quality standards. And then you could probably do it. If you were to do it professionally, you have to get a license. So you can get a license from the Big 12. I think it costs $5,000 a year to maintain that license. And you can make any Big 12 symbol you want. But you have to send everything in to get it approved. And then you pay them, I think it's 15%. So if you sell it for $20, you have to give me $3.
Boy, don't ask me on math. I get lost in a hurry.
Don't tell them about my dad's car and what we did.
And you can make anything you want for yourself.
Okay.
It's just selling it is when you get,
In trouble.
Yeah.
We did an embroidered pistol Pete that's in the trunk of 34.
As long as it's yours, it's legal.
Okay.
We're looking for y'all's program.
Now take them
you guys have any questions? Look, just real quick, I'll tell you just from a guy that does a lot with the plasma stuff, steel prep and paint, if you're looking at getting better, that's where I want to go next is powder coat options. And if I might have to get with you because that's my next grant is going to be and I want a big enough powder coat and oven and things that I can not worry about it. Right now I've got a homemade paint booth that we built with box fans for ventilation and air conditioner filters over the box fans to catch the paint so it doesn't blow out into my shop, but not an ideal situation. It just works for what we do now.
All of our big stuff's done by another company over in Paramount, but we do a lot of little stuff in a homemade oven. We actually used a oven that fell off the trailer that didn't ding. It was just a kitchen oven for a while for these little bitty things. So you just clean them up and powder on them and stick them in the oven.
Well, I use in my house, I use a smoker, electric smoker.
Yeah.
Pick them up, you'll find them for sale, clean out the inside. They're that wide, they're long enough that you can usually get, and you start up and they cook up to 400 degrees. So I built little hangers in mine, and that's where I do my little small stuff.
What prep work on them? Do you use flap discs on a angle grinder?
On anything small, we just use an angle grinder to clean them up. Anything big, they sandblast. If you want to knock off all the scale, scale will peel off eventually, and it'll take whatever you paint it with, it don't matter.
Right. That oil scale is no joke. I don't know, I guess they have to ship that steel that way, but
Oh yeah, it'd be rusted before we got it if it didn't.
but everything we do, we run an 80 grit flap disc on a grinder just like this, and it'll knock off the slag if you do have some slag on the back. But more than anything, it takes all the scale off the metal. And if you're not doing that now, I highly recommend doing that because it'll make your paint so much better, even if you're just spray painting.
Y'all lacquer too? Like wipe them down with lacquer?
Yeah, we usually dip them in some sort of lacquer or paint thinner,
Okay.
or we spray them down with choke cleaner or brake cleaner, depending on what's easiest. But that gets any of the oils off.
They make a product that you can get it at O'Reilly's, AutoZone, where the painters do it, and some of it's called McMaster or something, but it's specifically designed to bring those residue and stuff off of it to let the powder coating adhere to it. You do a quick wipe down with that. Now, some of your bigger facilities actually have dipping tanks where they'll bead blast it, sand blast, or whatever they're doing, and then they'll put it in those dipping tanks and it removes any other residue before they coat it.
Where I get frustrated, I'm just going to pull this up real quick because I want to take y'all out and see the table before we run out of time.
You know your next workshop next year, because you've got to learn how to paint, so you just.
I'll sure try.
I want to get a big old powder cut. I'm willing to have an 8 by 20.
George Huzar there at Hennessy, if you ever want to see one,
What's he got?
you can get like a 12-foot trailer in his. It's unreal.
See, that's,
I
I got the
actually,
perfect spot for it right here.
I actually was bidding on some Purple Wave that were already manufactured ovens that were like 5 by 5 by 6s.
Yeah.
And the day of the auction day, I was getting all giddy because they were only about $300 or $400.
Oh,
And a couple of them one of them was 3-phase, but the other one was 220. And I was excited about that until all of a sudden, 15 minutes before the bid was over with, it started jumping and then went for $1,800 and I didn't get it.
I'm thinking about doing a grant. Perkins got one approved, so.
It's just not going to be clear enough. That's rattle canned, and they look okay until you get to, I don't know how I get to like the rest of my stuff in my drive, but anyway, that one right there, let me see if I can just zoom it in here. I took that to our body shop there in town. And of course, that guy painted it like he would have painted a car. And it was just unbelievable how big of a difference a good paint job makes. I don't care how neat your design is. I don't care how clean you got it. That looked like something that somebody would pay money for. And some of the stuff we make is a neat design, but you can definitely tell it's spray painted. That Pistol Pete we made for, I think that was a Christmas party or something like that. And it's neat and it looks good from afar, but you get close and they're kids. I mean, there's runs, and I'm always amazed at how, I guess we just don't raise graffiti artists anymore because, man, kids don't know how to spray paint. They just hold the button down and let her run.
It doesn't matter how many times you tell them.
Oh, yeah.
Always
Don't
stop
hold
before
it.
you change directions.
Yeah, it does not matter how many times they'll.
The
Just
best,
around beat
the
that.
best paint I've got for kids is like the hammered, because you can,
It hides everything.
Yes.
Yes,
and so we use a lot of hammered because
I agree.
One thing, if you, when we're, like on our machine, nothing on our machine will ever be high gloss. Because it shows everything. Now, like this sign, that guy cleaned that up and got it looking really good before he painted it. If you just took a part and then painted it with that high paint, high gloss paint, it would look like junk. Just every little scratch you'll see. We do everything with texture, we do everything with matte. Because it hides all the little imperfections underneath it.
That's why I like the flap disc too, to clean them up. If you just use a regular grinding disc, you'll gouge your metal, and I don't care what you do. I mean, shy of Bondo in it. I don't use.
Buffing wheels?
Yeah, I use 80 grit sandpaper
I don't
discs.
even
I mean,
buy just a normal head. That's all I buy. I buy them in little boxes.
yep.
We use grinders still to clean up the welds, you know, where we want a flat surface because it takes the material off a lot faster. And then, but we switched to nothing welds to do everything else. And a lot of times we'll even take the welds off.
They make a good one now from Eastwood, who you can look at for a lot of powder coating stuff, but it actually looks like a grinder, but it's got a little disc around it, and you can strip car paint off, you do it, shine up, but it does an awesome job. It almost looks like one of those mechanical brooms, but a lot tighter dents in the pot, and you can take it right over the top of a used car, and it'll pull the rust paint and everything right down the metal, and smooth, ready to paint.
Let's let me grab this camera and let's go out and, can we cut on that little piece you brought, Ron?
Yeah, I brought that little piece for you to tinker around with. And
Did you test it? Because I haven't seen that been used in a while.
no, we cut with it yesterday. I ran it and did everything before I loaded it up. If it wasn't gonna work, I wasn't gonna load it.
I don't know what
You'll notice a lot of black stain underneath that welder and welder trailer. Our piece of tarp come up about halfway through the thing. But we got it done tonight. It's got to say the I'm up here about 10:30 that night. But then like you see the leaves on it? We cut out a stem on ours and painted around it. Like it was cool.
So the table itself, and like I said, almost all of them are going to come fully assembled anymore. When my CERT table showed up, it's 4 foot longer, but other than that, it looked exactly like this. I mean, it was
Cleaner.
well, it was cleaner. I'll say that.
And
I guess.
this is, just so you know, this is what you call the base model, the Trident one. This is your water table aspect. It's got a valve over here for draining the table and the coolant. Our Razor, which is the next little step up, has a built-in bladder in the bottom of it so that your water goes into there. When you're ready to do, you hook air to it, you open a valve, it'll bring the water up to the level you're going to cut. You cut with it. You got small parts that fell down, you just dump the dump valve, water goes back down the bladder, and you can reach down there and pick them. This one here, you have the disadvantage that the water stays in it the entire time. Now, no matter what table that you have, I will tell you this, if you have a water table like this, one of the first bad habits people do, especially because you guys head out during the summer, is they'll take one of these items. I know that sounds, you guys are used to hearing the term grounds and the way you run them. This is your work lead. This is where your positive DC is doing your feeding. They'll put them here in this water table and they leave them. And they go home for the summer and they come in and they'll do things and they leave it. And then they start to come out, start cutting the next fall, and they're starting to get sporadic things. This is critically important that it's clean and got a good conductivity, because if it's not feeding through your plate, you're not getting the arc voltage. You'll see your torch doing funky stuff. It's because that arc voltage is so critical for the torch to know how high it is off you're telling it to do 135 volts. You're putting amperage in there at 45 amps. So like ohms, volts equals amps times resistance. That's Ohm's law. You've already told it the volts. You've already told it the amperage. The only thing that dictates the height of this torch is resistance in that plasma gas. And so the conductivity between the plate and the material is what's going to give you that. And that's how the torch knows how high it is off the plate. And that's why it's critical. If you're not using this, if you're not cutting with it, take it, move it out of the water, keep it clean, keep it there so that when you're making conduct.
Yeah, that's totally what I do.
Huh?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, this is
I
this.
saw it on his face, he's like, I do that.
You have three critical points. When I'm talking to people about these machines, the three critical. You have your work lead, you have your nozzle, you have your electrode, and you have the swirl ring. And that swirl ring is pretty much just as important as your electrode and nozzle, because that's what's telling the gas what vortex. And if those four are not good, no matter what we're doing over here is kind of fruitless. But don't leave this down in the water if you want to make the fire and go.
So when you buy a machine from CERT, this is pretty close to what you're going to get. I mean, even if you buy a bigger plasma cutter, it's going to have a similar machine head. They have an on and off switch right there, which I think is really handy because you can flip that off. And he was talking consumables, and he's right. I mean, I have switched my electrode and even my cup before. And cool, Ron, you put that on with pliers, or maybe I'm just a weenie.
You need me to help you there, sir?
I think I got it.
Mind helping you.
See, I don't think mine is in the way like that. Seems like I usually lay it up there somewhere.
This is a demo unit.
I do that so it blows in the wind while I'm pulling the trailer down the road. At least people know where I'm at. It's kind of like a little guided message.
Question though, do you guys ever hook them up to earth ground or need to, or?
Not on the Power Maxes.
Okay.
You can, it's not a bad idea, but on the bigger plasmas, they're high freak. This is a long conversation, I'll try to keep it short. How they initiate the plasma, they use a high frequency bolt burst of electricity. And it's like it just gives out what we call noise, it's radio waves. And other cables will pick that noise up. So you ground those to dump all that. These don't. They bounce the electrode off the nozzle.
Because that was what we thought was wrong with my Torchmate, so I've got an earth ground over there. So I just hooked it up to my new table, couldn't get anything to work, unplugged the earth ground, I'm good.
Yeah.
Torchmate's fought with that. I mean, I had to do that on mine.
Well, if this was one of our bigger machines and stuff, this cable here would be double shielded, grounded. I'd put a 6-foot ground rod out here. It'd come up. We're pulling all the noise we can away from the machine.
Okay.
So that it doesn't interrupt. But there again, we're also using EtherCAT as the communication in it. And that's where the EtherCAT is what's susceptible for that noise.
The other reason why they have more problems than we do is because we use shielded cables. All of our cabling is shielded, whereas a lot of those are not.
About to say, because they say you can't wrap it up, you got to stretch them all out, plug them different outlets. So
if we were to do on a $100,000 machine, if we were to do what they do, it'd never work. So we start off in that realm. So everything we do down here, we do the same as we do up there.
Yep.
I will tell you, if you're going to do that earth ground, or you're going to drive a ground rod, when I was at Blair, I didn't even think to look like at where water lines were, and I just went to hammer drilling, and I found a water line underneath my pad in the shop. That was awesome. That's mostly what you're going to change for consumables, is that tip and swirl ring, or at least that's what I do more than anything. I'm sure they're expensive. I don't even look. I just order them by the box, and if it starts cutting bad or throwing codes or whatever, I change them.
they're expensive because I usually don't have a PO, and I just send my debit card with the kids. Say, hey, go buy this.
The thing is, though, is if you teach good habits, if you teach good habits from the start and let the kids know the good habits from start to there, it'll help them. Number one, if you just show them going over there and you unscrew that cap and you throw a new nozzle, new thing, and put it back together, get it out, look at the swirl ring, look at the condition of the shield cap, get used to inspecting them, because you're training these people around you by observation. And if you don't do that, honestly, a shield, it's like $35 for a flow ring on an XPR 300. It cost a guy $1,800. He's 6 hours from me. He put a new set, and when he called me with a problem, the first question I asked, did you put new consumables? That's what I'm going to ask anybody, because 60-70% of the time, that's where the issue is. What was the last thing you did? Well, I put new consumables in. Let's go back to that. Did you verify the consumables are the right consumables, right amps and everything? Because they have a screen on there that'll show you on the Edge Connect which one of the parts, verify it. Guy was adamant. I just put new consumables. Your machine's cut like, do you want me to come up there? I drove 5 hours up there. We put in a new swirl ring because it didn't have one. And 5 hours back, the cost of the swirl ring, the time on site, $1,800, just because he didn't do disassemble, look at each one of the items, verify they're the right item, in good condition, there, put them in. So if you do that in front of your students, I know it seems annoying and time is always a bit, but you've got to teach them good habits. Respect those consumables when they're disassembling them, and make sure they're the right ones, and let it follow them through their career, because once they get into a bigger machine, that'll bite them in the butt every time.
Like a pipe rack.
Okay, let's go back real quick before we cut to the water. If you've ever had a non-water table, is yours water table? Okay.
No, ours is just one of those fall through.
It just falls through.
It looks a lot like that one. Honestly, it looks a lot like what he's got. I don't know if that's a torch man or a plasma cam.
Plasma
All I
cam.
know is I use that design edge.
Yeah,
whatever,
plasma cam.
It drives me nuts. And my superintendent is the only one who can figure out how to make anything that looks worth a darn on that thing. And
We just need you going home saying, I need a new machine.
I'm just gonna politely ask, and he's gonna tell me. But it's fine.
So the water table is going to cut your smoke down almost nothing. And I love it just for that aspect, because at Blair, when I had that open slat machine, I mean, all my rafters were covered in soot. I mean, because that pretty much just goes straight up. The floor was nasty underneath it all the time. The water table cuts all that out. Now, we clean ours twice a year, and I'm sure that's not near enough.
More than most.
Well, when we do it, it's nasty. I mean, the bottom of that thing is just full of sludge, even after you drain it. I have figured out to put a screen over that drain because you'll get something that'll clog it. And we got the bright idea and stuck the air hose in the valve and shot it back the other way. Do not do that. There's a big black spot on the ceiling above ours, and it all rained back down on top of us. And that water out of there is black, and I mean, will turn you black. So I do put an additive in it now that I got from these guys that kind of keeps the stink down, and I don't know, we don't have bugs laying eggs in it and stuff. The main thing, I was using borax because I saw that on the internet. It starts leaving a nasty film on stuff and starts gumming up stuff. I don't recommend borax, even if somebody tells you that it'll work. It'll clear the water up and it pulls all the particulates to the bottom, but I didn't like what it was doing to the metal on my machine, and even the aluminum was starting to get a real funky scale and stuff. So plasma blue, is that what that stuff's called?
CERT blue.
CERT blue. 5-gallon bucket. It's just an additive you add to your water. Kind of gets some headaches out of the way at home. Torch collision. So why does it do that? Why does it break off? You guys know?
In case you hit something that.
Yeah, as is a safety. If it does get in a bind, I would a whole lot rather it do that than start ripping torches off and breaking bolts. And it'll happen. I mean, I've got mine into my ground or my bead before. Sorry, Ron. And it'll eventually happen to you where that pops off. So you'll be glad that's there. Would anybody want to come with this? I can show you how real quick. You want to do it?
I have no idea, but I can.
No. If you guys get around where you can see, do you mind if can I go through this?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay.
If you know what you're doing, I'm just gonna step back over here.
All right. So this is the new OpCon. Is that what you call it, Ron? New OpCon.
Yeah.
Halo system.
So mine is a little different. I don't think I will get stopped up anywhere. There's an emergency brake, so you're going to click that emergency brake first,
It's
which is
already
that.
been done,
Oh, well, so
we didn't do it anyway, so
yeah.
we can start over.
Okay, so you can hit OK. So when you walk up to it, you'd hit the emergency brake or the e-stop. Or click. Did you click it the second time?
Oh.
There we go. And then you click the power button, which is going to power the machine. And then now we're going to need to home it. And I think even on the plasma cams, on even your machine, home is always bottom left. Is that every machine, Ron?
No, you can set it.
Oh,
I set mine to back left.
okay.
We generally do it toward the control.
Okay, so towards your control. Home is going to be down in this corner. So if it was way out there, and you could use the arrow key there, if you just bump that arrow and run it way up there. Yep. Just click and hold. Oh, I'm sorry. Set your speed here. That arrow, just drag that out to like 300. Yeah, somewhere in there. Now hit that. So no matter where it's at on the table, it's going to have to home. You can see there. If you hit the home button right there, just click it once and let go. All right, Jason, what'd I do?
No, just go to
Oh, all. Sorry.
Now, you're doing two things when you're homing it. You're telling the machine where it's at in reference to the table. What it's going to do is, this is actually not a limit switch, this is a home switch. These are your limit switch stops. When it makes contact with there, that's when it shuts. When it makes contact here, it's makes contact with the machine and says, this is what I'm touching, this is where I'm at, And then when it makes contact here, it says, oh, this is where I'm at, and it will adjust itself to square itself with the table. So you're telling it where home is, so it knows where it's starting out. That gives it that, and then it's also telling the machine, oh, and it'll auto adjust and get itself square so that you're cutting it square with the table. If I had pushed this bearing down and moved it over, pushed this motor down and moved it 2 or 3 teeth to the left, you would have seen it correct itself when it got down here to the end.
And that's nice to know, because we've been cleaning ours, like rubbing these aluminum rails out, and I know it gets bumped and shoved around, but every time you come out to cut, you rehome it, and it, like he said, it fixes itself, which is pretty handy.
You'll see that more often on the one with dual, the ones with one drive motor running the y-axis. It can sometimes get itself in a bind, and you'll notice that in your cut quality. With motors on both sides, it keeps a little bit better tightness on your quality.
Gosh, that old Torchmate deal used spur gears and belts. God, that was a nightmare. Them belts would break, and spur gears would wear out. Okay, so go up to File, and I think there's one that says Recent. And then I think, is there one that says CERT? I think I found that was pretty small. CERT logo, yeah. I don't know why that didn't show up on there. Oh, I was just zoomed way in, wasn't I? So he's got 3 CERT logos. We don't have to cut all 3 of them. Just like when you homed, you come to the bottom left, you would want to start on the bottom left of your whatever you had selected there, or whatever you're going to cut. So we'll use our arrows here to move that laser in the bottom left of that plate. Go ahead.
Okay, so I'll use these arrows to move this thing.
So see this laser crosshair here?
Sure.
And you'll be able to see it once it gets out there a little ways.
Move this arrow.
Yep. Well, is that not working?
You got the speed turned up?
Yeah.
Yeah, you crashed it earlier, so the speed is all the way to 0.
Just exactly what happens every time I try to.
Yeah. All right. I need assistance. I don't know, Ron.
What'd you hit? Stop.
Stop.
Why'd you
It's
hit
kind of
stop?
like it's kind of like hitting cancel. If there's some process that you selected that you didn't, you can hit stop, because just like when you hit stop, if it starts to cut and you don't want it to cut it, you can. Something was selected that was a process, part of the process, and you're just telling it cancel and move back to what it was. So now you're ready to move it out there to the front.
Should I try?
Yeah. Okay, then go up. All right. So you got your crosshairs pretty close to that bottom left-hand corner, and it'll cut up and to the right. So that crosshair needs to be the bottom left, is how I think of it, on whatever you're cutting. So from there, you would set that point, if that's where you wanted to start, as home
Or set start.
or set start.
So
You're right.
You're
Set
right.
start. And that sets that point right there as, I don't know why that keeps moving. And like I said, this is the first time I've played with the new OpCon, so I probably should have just let them do it. I just wanted to look important, I guess. All right. So you could select dry run, and it would run without turning the plasma on. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
So try it.
Yeah. Click that and then hit start or run. And the reason dry run is, or the reason I use it anyway, is to check and see if it's going to run off the metal. Nothing more annoying than being like 5 minutes into a pretty big cut and you didn't get your measurements right and it runs off the steel over here in the corner and you just wasted a big chunk of metal. Those guys were talking about nesting earlier. I'll be honest with you, the only time I use nesting is like when we cut Christmas ornaments for the whole school because we do exact same thing over and over and over and over. Most of the time we're doing custom signs and custom parts, so it's kind of a one-off thing. And I do wind up with a lot of waste. We just wind up rolling it up into a big metal burrito and scrapping them. But
with this right here, you can leave the lasers on, and wherever that laser point, because it's lined with where the pierce point is, you can watch it, and if that X goes off the plate, you're off the plate. And so you can correct that in the dry run. But when you get into actual cutting, you can reach over there and turn the lasers off when you cut it. They're up high enough to be protected, but sometimes splatter can get up and different things and mess up the lenses on them. So it's on this, they're usually not a problem this high and this small of a plasma. Bigger machines, it is a problem.
I don't ever turn mine off.
So
I guess I'm supposed to, but.
And if you want to stop it, you can do it anytime in the thing and then return to start.
Yep.
Right there, lasers.
That's how you turn it on and off. Yeah. So go ahead. You want to hit stop. And then should be one that says return to start.
It stopped a second time.
Oh.
First time we paused it, the second time I actually stopped it.
Return to start.
Mm-hmm.
Plasma cam's not good.
I can. You just turn off your dry run and start again.
Yep. Turn off dry run.
You want to hear Travis first time? You do.
And then we should hit run and it should start cutting.
And I may misfire once because we haven't ran air through the system. There may be something that I didn't know.
So just go ahead and hit it.
The plasma hadn't fired yet.
Isn't that a safety deal with hypotherm though?
Huh?
That. Uh-oh. Is that a height control?
I didn't see if it was turned on or off on the fly.
Oh, we didn't turn on height control. Where's it at on this one? Or is it turned on?
It's just that the material is different than what we programmed it for.
Oh.
Yeah, so probably just turn that off and run on this one. So you programmed it for 14 gauge, and this is 20 or something.
And that's actually when you check the gauge, it's collecting the voltage, and that's what we were talking about, the voltage determining the height.
We have no wear out all the time. So do you have a consumable kit with you?
Yes, I do.
You can run it without the water in it.
All that water's doing is pulling a lot of the. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all of that smoke would go down into the water if you had it full of water. It would just be a pain to fill it up just for this, you know.
You got one ready to get another one?
Oh, you can stop it. I don't want to waste Ron's material, but.
That's not mine, I stole it from Jay.
Oh.
That's the first time I ever seen it run, so I saw it a little bit at Take Convention.
Now, one of those little rings is for the 1650.
Well, like at National Convention, they'll run them inside their career fair. I mean, with water in them. So the head drive on mine, I've got to send to these guys to get the newer one, I guess. The lifter. And I can tell a difference. I think I can tell a difference just off watching mine run and watching that one. That one seems snappier.
I'm just going to tell you yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That way you can
Much
tell the
heavier
difference
duty.
when you go home.
Okay.
We only use that one now. So your consumables are basically these three parts. Your shield cap, 4 parts. Your nozzle, your spool ring, and your electrode. This one and this one are the ones that you really wear out. Alright, so typically you're going to replace these quite often, 500 starts or so. This one here lasts a long time, but you're going to get to where it doesn't cut good and you can't figure out why. And it's probably going to be that one. This one actually makes your gas a swirl.
I'm scaring everybody.
This is just a shield cap. It's going to get stuff stuck on it all the time. You knock it off. As long as these holes aren't plugged up, it's going to keep on going. But eventually you're gonna pierce too close or something, you're gonna eat it up, so it is replaceable as well. And then of course you got the outer cap. The outer cap should last forever. It just, sooner or later, the threads on it or get to where this won't go on or it won't screw up to the torque right. Chunk it and put another one on it. But these are the two that you're gonna change all the time. So you also have 45 amp, 65 amp, 85 amp. So the higher the amperage, you use a different nozzle. This is a 45 XP, so it can only go up to 45 amps. But there's bigger ones. You can put a 125 amp one on here. That'll cut 1 inch steel. So on that one, you'll have smaller sets. So you can actually turn it down to cut 45 amp. So.
So I got a handheld 85 that I was gonna try to swap over because I thought I had some issues with my machine, but I don't have it doesn't connect to the same torch handle.
You can put the kit in them. You can put a CPC kit and a voltage divider in it so that it can communicate. But it depends on how they wire up their arc voltage and.
You have a little suitcase down
But-
there?
I had to open up my 45 and wire it.
Yeah.
That's hypertherm. So these work with any hypertherm plasma regardless of brand new.
Now you can buy aftermarket
What's the
ones,
difference
but
on
we
your
have found
short
that
table
they
versus your long
don't.
table?
Now what you got to remember is piercing.
You'll have a machine and then you'll have.
Because I hate,
You're-
that's one of the issues that we have is the 8-foot paper, you know what I mean?
Right.
And little kids trying to,
So it was $2,000 or $3,000, but I just thought, my gosh, for the
not enough to matter.
not enough to matter. You know?
Two things to remember. One of the things that eats your electrode and shield light or your nozzle light is piercings. If you're cutting out a lot of flat plate where you're doing one pierce and a big cut, that consumable goes quite a ways. If you're cutting out a plate that's got 67 pierces on it, then you're piercing. The bigger your machine, like an XPR, it's 1800, isn't there, or 16 on the XPR, like that. That's usually what their consumables range that they're looking, that life of it. These are a lot less. But the other thing is, nowadays, 45 and the 125 are the only ones you can buy that are not sync. The new sync ones, this cap down, it's a one-piece consumable. It's got a brain in it, and when you plug it in, the machine recognizes what amperage you put in there, whether it's good, bad, indifferent, and it'll tell you. It's got a place on the screen that'll do it. And I think you said we're working on getting it to where it'll show on the screen, but the new 65, 85, and 105 are syncs. If you ordered one today, that's what they would come, and they're a one-piece consumable with a brain in it, and it communicates with the machine telling it what it is, what amperage it is, and that's the only piece you replace. But it's about $55, but they seem to last pretty good for the whole one piece.
The biggest cut quality issue we have and the biggest amount of phone calls, largest amount of phone calls we get is because of cut quality. And almost every time it's because the consumables aren't in right or the consumables are worn. So they switched to a unitized piece. So it's a little bit more expensive per change. In other words, I could buy the nozzle and electrode a little cheaper, but the mistakes that were being made, it actually saves people a ton of money by changing out the whole piece.
And then on the cut quality, the next thing is choosing the one for the. If you look in there, you'll see, say say that 45 amp cuts 1/4 inch, and you can cut 1/4 inch with 65. You can cut 1/4 inch with 85. The higher amps you go, the faster rate of speed the machine does, your quality goes down. So you got to find a happy medium. How fast do I want it cut with the end product that I'm looking in mind? So the less amperage that it does, the slower the machine runs, a lot of times less dross that you'll have show up on the back side of it. But if you cut it with a much higher amp, it'll cut quick, cut the part out, and it may be just fine for what you're using it for, but you're likely to have more dross on the back side of it because of its rate of cut.
How long do those machines last? Like, I know my 85 is over 10 years old, so it's like just the amount of use they get, or?
Depends, yeah. The Power Maxes last a long time. The biggest thing that causes them to not be used anymore is not that they're wore out, it's that their technology has been exceeded. So, like every 10 years, most everything is not necessarily obsolete, but it's been surpassed so much by the next generation that people start trading them out because of that.
Yeah, it's just a handheld, so it'll
We still have people running Power Maxes that are before these Power Maxes, the 1250s, the 1650s. They're still on the machine.
25 years old, yeah. But
Gosh.
A board, like if the main board goes out in there, eventually it will. And when it does, it's going to be cheaper to pay for a new one than it is going to be to fix it.
Size has sure changed a lot over the years. It just seems like they get smaller every time I get a new plasma cutter. I mean,
Technology When I started doing this in 1997, there was no such thing as a Power Max. The smallest plasma I could get was, that big and that wide. That was for a machine. They all had smaller handheld units. Now the technology is just unreal. What I can do with this little $75 motor compared to what I used to have to buy for $1,200, it's amazing.
Well, they make a unit like this. It's a 30, isn't it? That's actually, and I'm not recommending it because it's not really good for Ward, but it has its own built-in air compressor and everything. I mean, it compresses its own air, and for smaller stuff, some people, it probably works ideal for them. But that's how small it is. It's a self-contained unit. You plug it in, and it's got the air in the tip with it. And
That's a body shop rig there.
And
Yeah.
field.
Yeah.
You go out working on your fence, so you got to do is have a generator.
it falls in line with the MIG welders, the 135s, the 140s and stuff that Lincoln.
It's like those little Miller
Yeah.
stick welders. I mean, them things are tiny.
Yeah. Now they're even got a little bit smaller than that Bobcat there, but they do make a unit now that's got its own built-in generator. The generator, plasma cutter, and air compressor all built in one.
What I would leave you with, if you want to upgrade, I sold my plasma cam. Like I said, it wasn't in great shape, but it cut. I think I sold it for $5,500. So if you did want to upgrade, a $15,000 grant and selling your old machine for $5,000, you're not coming up with a whole lot of money on the difference there. And Jason, I don't know how you stayed where you're at on your price. I think I know you're just ballparking prices a while ago, but they haven't gone up much in 4 years.
We try not to. We're going to have to. Literally things that our lead times went through the roof too, and now they're coming back down. But things I could pay, they're on probably a 25% increase in the parts that we buy.
See that little black dot right there? That's the proximity switch. That's what tells you torch collision. Right now, currently, it takes us 36 weeks to get that particular one. We had to go find a different brand of it because that one now takes 36 weeks for us to get.
And it costs 4 times as much.
Yeah.
Sheesh.
So we try to keep our prices down. We do have to raise them a little bit, and by the end of this year, they're going to have to go up again. But our prices are, usually Hypertherm sends out a new price once a year. And so far, they've already sent out 4 of them this year. Price increases.
Nice.
Well, the thing is, between us and the others, I'm not bad. A lot of people use those. We have 3 things to offer you: price, quality, and service. I'll let you pick 2.
This is a better built machine by far.
Well, and have you ever called those other people and tried to get help?
Oh, yeah. Every day.
It's all horrible.
High schools all over the country have been calling me for years to try to help them on those. That's why I build this now. Because I go in and I'm going, I can't help you with this.
There's a couple of companies that manufacture the bigger machines that I've rebuilt their machines 10 miles from their plant to our new current thing. I'm talking going with the new Edge Connect and all that, upgrading them, because, and 10 miles from the plant they're manufactured in, because those people can't get techs out there to it. But
they pay us, there's 2 companies that pay us to drive all the way from here to Wichita. And the company who made their machine is 10 miles from Wichita.
I thought I talked with you on the phone. Yeah, you were real abusive. I didn't know if I was going to come down there. I wasn't sure what was going on with that.
Can I tell you I'm really stupid? I just learned what consumables were.
That's not
all right.
stupid. The thing is
You asked me what my consumables were, and I thought, holy.
Well, here's the reality of it is, guys. I keep using the word over and over again, but everything in life is a process. If you learn the process, everything else becomes simple. If you understand what this machine's trying to do, the process, it lights up life. You have not, honestly, guys, you know what my expertise in? I mean, I've got a degree in finance. My expertise, I can tell you anything and everything you want to talk about on this concrete. I can tell you there's 450,000 yards of concrete in Stillwater, Oklahoma right now that I either mixed, designed, poured, finished, and did. 450,000 yards here in Stillwater. I just started working on these machines 4 years ago.
Now you know what's
So
But
you
I've
were
been a really
new?
good shot for a long time.
Golly.
Do what?
You were new whenever we met.
You were my first.
Oh my God.
I just want you to know
You
that.
you sounded so like intelligent when we met.
Go that route. See where that gets you. No, I'm just saying, I have everything that I've paid my way
man.
through college as a heavy equipment mechanic. I've worked on stuff my entire life, and the only way, it's not because I'm a brilliant scientist. I do HVAC, electrical, and home. I've done that. But number one thing I always did is, what is it trying to accomplish? Learn that process, and then the light bulbs came on. That's why I'm telling you, if you learn the process of it, what it's trying to do, everything starts making sense on why you're as drill sergeants. We used to make people walk around and crawl around on their belly and pick up cigarette butts while they were low crawling. They thought, well, that's the stupidest thing, you're torturing them. No, I was teaching them how important it was to keep the area you were in clear, because then I would come out and draw 1 meter square and go out and look in that 1 meter square, calculate, and I could tell them who had been there, approximately the size of the unit that had been there, where they were from, just by the debris and the tracks and stuff they left in 1 meter. It had a purpose. Everything we're trying to teach you and everything you're going to be trying to teach your students needs to have a purpose, so that that's when I was talking about pulling the consumables part. If you teach that good habit, it follows them through the rest of their life, and they won't be making phone calls to me going, no, I swear I replaced that swirl ring, and I drive 6.5 hours to find out they didn't.
Yeah. Or fly clear to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, turn the power on.
Ooh.
Oh, we literally had a customer, and this is kind of a rule of thumb, and when we go in and work on a machine, if you say, hey Ron, I gotta go pick up my kids, and you leave me, when I'm done with the machine, I'm gonna shut every breaker and everything associated with that machine off, because I don't know what your startup is, and to protect our company from liability, I'm gonna take it all the way to the bare essentials, and I'm gonna shut the powers and disconnects off. We came in and fixed a machine for a guy in Oklahoma City, got it running. I was like, okay. Went over and I hit all the disconnects and powered it off, and I went. He called raising all kinds of cane the next day. I got 2 welders here. I'm like, I'm in the middle of a machine. I can't leave till I'm done with this. Got over there at 5 o'clock, and I walked in, and he said, well, they've already gone. And I walked right over and flipped his breaker up, disconnect for his power unit. He didn't even know where his disconnect was for his power unit. And that's the only thing that was stopping him from running at 7 o'clock this morning, was just flipping his breaker. But if he'd understood the process, my power unit's not on. What's it take? Electricity. Where does it get it from? I don't know. I need to find out where it gets electricity and then look it up. And I'm just telling you, it's just simple steps like that that'll save you a lot of headaches.
I hope today, I know we're about out of time, I hope today was beneficial to you guys. I sure want to thank the CERT guys for coming out. And it was important to me to get them here, because if you do decide to go the CERT route, for one, I'm going to be a lot more apt to be able to help you over the phone if you do want to call me. But the customer service is so important on these machines. I'm just not going to lie to you and tell you can get it anywhere else. That Piranha machine was made in Texas. I think it was a Piranha. Maybe that's not the right name, but I used them because I thought, well, they're only 4.5, 5 hours away. I still couldn't get customer service. That is so key, and I wanted you guys to be able to put a face to a company, I guess, and get some time with these guys. But I think they're the future of at least what we're going to see in our ag buildings. If you want to be competent sending kids out to do something like this in the workforce, I think you're going to have to be on a machine that's this level of quality. So I thought it was important. Hopefully, if we ever do this again, we get a little more involvement, get a few more people out here. But it's got to be a word of mouth deal. I mean, I would have never known about these guys if.
Well,
There's
we
the
are.
reason I don't have one, because I didn't.
No, well, we are doing twice a year.
Yeah, and that's.
We are doing twice a year training. We set one at Perry, where they just finished one a week ago at Washington. You can go to our website, you can see things. We have VOAG instructors that are part of our thing, and we send out a big broad email and we say, we're going to be at this school, and we pick a school that has one of our machines, so you can sit in the classroom environment. He does training to understand on a lot of little more in detail on what the Inkscape is. We try to schedule times that when it's available, we'll bring Chris Huffin in or somebody from ProNest, and they'll give you a class on that. We've got links to get you into, Crystal's got tremendous resources to get you into applying for ProNest, getting it to, because you're a school, there's applications in there, you can get it, you don't even have to buy a machine today, and you can apply for ProNest and get it coming to one of your schools.
We can get you the information on the grants. We cannot help you fill out the grants. That's against Oklahoma law. I can't do your grants for you. But we can get you the information.
I'm not saying anything, I'm just pointing.
Not me, my wife, yeah.
But there are, and if there's something you want to know about one of our machines, call us, and we can tell you what machine is closest to you. We've got them all the way from southeast Oklahoma, southwest Oklahoma, up in Fairview. We've got them in Collinsville. We've got them in Okemah. There's all over the state, and we can tell you. Yeah.
You got to include Hollis in there because it's all the way out there by itself.
Is Hollis still in the state?
Barely.
I don't hear from them anymore. I need to get a hold of them.
Oh, Pear Bear.
Yeah, the last time we had they had an issue with their, and there are times that if you have an issue and it's out of the warranty period, we're going to do what's economical. We understand you're on a fixed budget. So if something with this OpCon comes, and that guys, I don't know if you see that little square right there. That's the brains of this entire thing. That's your computer. That's what's doing everything. If it needs upgrade or it needs repaired,
send it to me.
Yeah.
Send it back to you.
Yeah, and we'll try to, we're pricey on shop visits because, we 65% of the time, 70% of our time, we're on the phone helping you solve the problem by phone. You're not getting a bill. That means I got 30 to 35% of the time to pay for all the techs when we do go out in the field. We got to generate money to pay for their services. So, but that's it. You've got your drive box and you got that. If there's issues with it, they're pretty simple to remove it, put it in a box, or in some cases, if you call me and I'm nearby, I'll come by and get it and take care of it. And you're not nearby. Just remember that.
Usually if we come by you and if you got a minor problem, hey, when you're this way, if I'm sending somebody past you, we stop in and help you out, and then come on back.
4 years of my machine, though, I will tell you, it's been a dirty part or somebody changed a setting and I just wasn't smart enough to catch it. I mean, it easily worked through on the phone. Now, maybe not with Ron every time, I don't know.
I know, not with Ron. I usually go, hold on, let me get you someone that cares, and I hand it back to somebody else. But I will tell you this, when you do your training, if whatever machine, whatever you do, always look at your upcoming class, your freshmen, and look who your little shining star is, and get them involved in it, because what a lot of VOAG teachers do is they come out and they get 1 or 2 people trained, and it's usually their seniors, and they'll get them trained, and then guess what, those guys leave, and you're gone for a summer, you forget what you're doing. You get one of those younger kids and get it perpetuating and get it training in there, you won't have to ask those questions. And even if you leave, there's somebody still there that can help get the new ag teacher going because they're experienced with it. And I highly recommend you always, anytime you do any training, to pull in the thing of that and let you get back to what you're doing. I'm going to start disconnecting and get out of here.
That is a really good point, and I figured that out. If you get a kid that you trust that can sit over there and kind of sit by the computer, help the other ones while they're cutting, because that's the biggest problem you're going to face. In the classroom, you can get them all to have Inkscape on their computer. You can kind of keep them all motivated. But if you take a class of 20 8th graders out in the shop and they're all just having to stand around one computer while they individually go through sheet cam, it's pretty hard to keep their focus on one spot. And that's where I've really started pushing on some of those kids that kind of excel at it as 8th graders. I kind of keep them going, especially ones that want to do engineering or even metal work for a career. They're the ones I leave over there with those 8th graders, and I take the rest of them and go run the torch or something to keep them preoccupied and just kind of run small groups.
Can I tell you another little trick? How many of you have seen people advertising 15 or 48-inch screen TVs on the thing for next to nothing? Buy you one, keep it out of the shop, mount it. You can disconnect the USB from here, the HDMI from here, and you can run you an HDMI over there. And when you're trying to train these guys, have a screen on the board. You don't even look at this one. You can sit there and show them, and you got 20 kids seeing the same thing on a big screen for less money. and you're not fighting around this OpCon. You can you can be around it, but you can have them watching the screen. It's got the same display and everything. But I think this OpCon will only handle one screen put on it there. So you'd have to undo the HDMI and run an HDMI over to it. But it doesn't take you 5 minutes. And then that way you've got a screen big enough for more than one student to see and look at it. Not a problem.
I just ordered, One Oak gave us a little grant money, and I just ordered 2 mobile 96-inch smart TVs from Industry Systems there in Chickasha, because they do it on a package where it's already on the cart and stuff. It's just easier that way, and they were $1,100 a piece. So he's right. I mean, that's dirt cheap, you know, for something you could plug in right there and
You do
everybody
know
could
we
see.
make TVs, don't you?
You're full of baloney.
Don't even go there. When we do our goal is to do more than just sell a machine. We want you guys to use them. We want to help kids. Nothing annoys me more than all the high schools I go into and I see cutting machines sitting back in the corner all covered up in stuff because they can't use it. We're trying to fix that little by little, get better at helping you, helping kids. First goal is the training. Y'all can't remember how to run them. I can't send a technician to every high school and reteach everybody. So I thought, hey, I go somewhere and they all come to me, we can do this over and over and over again. The next level is to come up with a webinar type setup where we can sit down, you guys can just sit in your computer and we can go over it just like I do in the classroom. That's coming soon. So the goal is not just to sell machines, it's to help kids get on machines, help them teach them a career, something that they can use when they become adults. That's where I started. I started in my VOAG, learning how to weld, learning how to cut with one of the very first handheld plasmas in 1980 something. Learned how to do electricity, right? Just like that right there. And I went on to Kansas State, studied grain science, and now I build robots for a living. But most of what I utilize is what I learned back in high school.
You guys have questions? All right. Well, I'm going to